Alright, good evening YouTube. In today's video, we're going to be doing another subscriber program review. This program review is coming from Aaron. So he's been on the channel, subscribed to the channel for quite a while, so you might have recognized him from other comments on other videos. So we're looking into his program today. His program is a modified version of Dr. Swole's 4-day upper-lower routine, which I believe is the high volume upper-lower template. And his main goals are size and strength, to increase speed and explosiveness for basketball, and to get better at pull-ups. So quite a wide range of goals there, but because his main goal is size, he doesn't really have too much speed and explosiveness. So athleticism is one of those things that, or beyond athleticism, just like performance. So Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, MMA, boxing, jiu-jitsu, speed, explosiveness, basketball, sport training is very different from bodybuilding style training, very different from, it's more similar to strength training in a sense that you need to kind of plan it out in a very specific way, go through these phases of potentiation to actually make sure that the training is productive. So when trying to incorporate that into a bodybuilding routine, it's kind of difficult. Generally speaking, it's kind of like you go through stages of what's usually like an off season, quote unquote, because you might not be, competing in the sport. So in your off season, you're just trying to build up general physical adaptations, get generally faster, get generally stronger, get generally more powerful, and then you transition that to more specific phases of training where you focus entirely on sport specific needs. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into that in this video because his main goal is size, but it's just something to consider if you have goals that are related to other sports outside of strength and size, because strength and size overall, they have a lot of overlap. They're not one-to-one by any means, and there are some elements of interference and some trade-offs that you're going to get as a result of pursuing both. However, when you start getting much further out from that, so powerlifting and basketball, completely different than powerlifting and bodybuilding. Bodybuilding and powerlifting have a lot of overlap. Powerlifting and basketball have almost none. And then bodybuilding and basketball has, it can, but it's difficult. So he then goes on to explain that for squats, I would slowly go down and explode up. That's good. And then I would have my jump lunges for lower 1 and Bulgarian split squat jump for lower 2, and that's fine as well. I realize I have a lot of sets for hamstrings and glutes, but I don't know what to get rid of. So hamstring and glutes, getting rid of things has to kind of have like a good purpose. Like, you don't want to get rid of things if they are going to essentially cause another problem into your program. You only want to get rid of something if, for example, it's not going to be missed. It's not going to be, there's no issue of you actually removing it from the program. So we'll get into that today. Also, can someone explain to me what supersets are? So supersets are when exercises are performed one after the other. So let's say you are doing a superset of bench press and chin-ups. This is one of my favorite supersets just because of how my gym is set up. The pull-up bar and the bench press are just so close to each other that it just makes more sense from a convenience and ease of access point of view to do chin-ups and bench press, just because even though it's a horizontal push and a vertical pull, generally speaking, you would kind of want to do it in the same plane, but just given the factor of convenience, I prefer doing chin-ups and bench. So it's when I do the chin-up and immediately go into the bench press with little to no rest in between, and then that is a superset. So it's one continuous bout of exercise with 2 different exercises. And then, so that's what a superset is. More videos will come with that topic. If the warm-up sets are supposed to be part of your actual sets, for example, in the bench press, do I do my warm-up sets and then the 4 sets? I'm a late beginner. So 4 sets, usually speaking, unless otherwise stated in the way the program is written by whoever wrote it, the sets that are alluded to are just the working sets, your top sets, your working sets, your hard sets. Now, I can make videos like kind of discussing like what makes a set a hard set, what makes a set a working set. Essentially, those words are kind of interchangeable, but you're not including your warm-up sets in your calculation of volume or tonnage. You're just, it's from a certain perspective, it could be just thought of as junk volume or just not something you need to take into consideration for the most part. So let's get into the actual program. So upper 1 is the flat barbell bench press, 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps. Incline bench press, 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps. So one thing I'm actually going to do real quick is I'm actually going to pull up, let's see, Dr. Swole, Dr. Swole, upper lower, high volume. I'm actually gonna pull up his program because I want to actually compare the two. I actually want to kind of see like what modifications were made. Let me just actually see if I can find this. So 1 second, I'm going to pause real quick. All right, and I'm back. So yeah, just sorry, it took me a while to actually find the program so that way I can actually like kind of compare the differences. Although I think I might be using the wrong one. There is another one available on Dr. Swole's Facebook group. There's a beginner upper lower, so maybe this is the one that he's basing his program off of. Let me actually look at this. So 1 sec. So let me pull this one up as well. See if that's the one that's being utilized. Nope, doesn't look like it. So I guess the main thing here is that he took the. Sorry, I'm just a little confused. So give me one moment, please. Thank you. Arigato gozaimasu. All right, cool. So he made a modified upper lower, but it actually looks like to be a bit like it doesn't really look to be like a modification as much as it looks to be just a completely new program. So I'm just going to review it as such. Sorry. That and make that bigger. So it's a fairly high volume program, and this is not something I really advocate for beginners. Beginners don't really need all that much volume just because for a couple reasons. For one, they may or may not be able to recover from it. They might be substituting hard work for a lot of volume, and this is an assumption. It's not like I can't really say with absolute certainty whether or not you're actually working hard enough, but generally speaking, when you give yourself like all this work to do, you're going to think to yourself, I need to save some energy to actually get through the rest of the workout, and then as a result you sandbag almost all of it except for maybe a couple hard sets in there, and then it's kind of, what is the point of that? So let's see. Let's look at the exercise selection and the exercise order. So you're starting out from compound movements to isolations, and that's good. One thing that I would do personally to shorten the length of this training day is just the fact of supersetting it. A lot of these movements like can be supersetted close to each other. Given the setup of your gym, it kind of depends. In my gym, it's pretty easy to superset things, but it just really depends. But flat bench press for 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps. That's a good rep range for the bench press. Incline bench press, 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps. I don't really like the idea of doing the same amount of sets and reps for 2 different movements. Sorry, my dog is like just running around outside my room right now. But I don't like the idea of doing the same set and rep range for 2 different movements, mainly because this implies that you're going to be trying to push progression of intensity on 2 different movements in the same day, and I'm not the biggest fan of that. Whether it's squats, deadlifts, bench, it doesn't really matter. On one of the movements, it's mainly your strength work. You're trying to stick with fairly low repetitions. 6 to 8 is still well within that kind of sweet spot of strength and size. But for your next movement, I would recommend you do something closer to 6 to 10, 8 to 12, something just with a bit more volume. Just a little bit more volume than your actual strength work. Because you want to choose a variation that is a weakness that is involved in your main movement, but it also has a better stimulus to fatigue ratio. So this movement, you feel it in your chest more, but you don't feel as beat up as a result. Then you're going to do assisted pull-ups, 4 sets of 8 to 10 reps. Here, I would just replace this with an AMRAP. Like I would just much rather see, like, whenever you do pull-ups, just do AMRAP. Like AMRAPs with like an RPE cap of, let's say, 7. So This is just a fancy way of saying don't grind any of the reps. None of the reps should be grindy because you just don't want to like tire yourself out unnecessarily. You just want to um, have good clean reps and good clean practice perfect form, and just go from there. Like this is actually something I find to be a bit more beneficial for a lot of my novice clients who they started out doing zero pull-ups, and then we use the band and negatives to really build up their ability to do pull-ups and chin-ups. And I told them, do not do any grindy reps. You want to keep your form perfect, and you don't want to burn yourself out on this movement, because if, for example, you can do 3 chin-ups or pull-ups, but 3 is like your literal, like it's the hardest thing of your life to do that 3 reps, you probably can't do another set. But if you just limit yourself to doing singles or doubles, you might be able to get 5 total reps at the end of the session versus just trying to get an all-out set of 3. So horrible math example there, but the mindset is what I'm trying to explain. Seated rows, I assume that you are doing this with a cable, so I would do this with a bit higher reps. And another thing that I would do personally, since you are a novice, is I would just do 2 sets. 2 sets, and then maybe some type of intensification technique, just so that way you're very familiar with working very, very hard. So you're doing something like drop sets, doing something like just going to absolute failure for 2 sets rather than just doing a lot of volume with what may or may not be productive amount of weight. So that's something I would do there. Shoulder machine press. So because it's a machine, I can see like 5 sets of 6 to 8 is like, but it's still like very high volume. It's kind of especially if you're doing a warm up with this, it's just too much volume that I think is kind of unnecessary for most people, and especially for those in the novice and beginner stage. Just kind of unnecessary. And also, like, another thing that I'm noticing is that if for biceps and triceps, I would keep the 2 equal as far as like sets and reps go, because these are 2 movements that you can very easily superset. So if you were to superset these 2 movements together, keep them set the same sets. Do either 3 sets on both or 5 sets on both. But because it's a small muscle group, it's not as taxing. You can definitely like get away with like higher volumes there because it's just not going to fatigue you as much. But on all your main work, if you're in the novice stage, I really do prefer just like 3 sets at most. 3 to 4 sets for your for main heavy compound movements, and then for all the accessories, 2 sets with the addition of an intensiveness technique such as drop sets, myo reps, or something of that nature. Let's go into lower body 1. Squats, 4 sets of 6 to 8. I like this. 4 sets of 8 to 10 on Romanian deadlifts. I also like that. So yeah, this is kind of like what I was explaining to you about like set allocation for different types of exercises. Like if these are your 2 main hitters, like yeah, 4 sets is fine. And then on the movements that are kind of like supplementary, 3 sets is good as well. So that way you're able to push a bit more volume on the rep side of things on these movements, but then you're still able to push progression here. If anything, you could actually flip the amount of sets and reps you do. So squats are fairly taxing. Do 3 sets of them. Romanian deadlifts also fairly taxing, especially if you're pushing intensity on these movements. So just do 3 sets there and then 4 sets on these 2 movements, because not as taxing, but they will definitely build up the muscles involved. Jumping lunges, I know that you are doing that because of your goals with basketball, explosiveness, and sport-specific training. So no real complaints there. 6 sets of calf raises. This is one thing where it's just kind of interesting to me. One thing that I would do is actually just split this up between 2 different calf raise variations. So on the leg press, it's very easy to do calf raises. So that now takes care of 3 of the 6 sets you have here. On jumping lunges, you can easily set up jumping lunges and then like sit down on a bench during your rest interval, put some dumbbells on your knees, and just do seated calf raises, and then do 3 sets following your 3 sets of jumping lunges. And now your calf raises are separated out and they're spread out, and like you're now not just calf raises waiting for 1 to 2 minutes for another set of calf raises. Certain exercises just don't really need that, so I would much rather you just do 2 variations, split them up, and put them as a superset with these 2 exercises. Then you're going to finish out with hammer curls and abs. I would superset these as well, because your hammer curls, unless you are doing like a hanging variation, which but it's still very minimal. Generally speaking, your hammer curls are not going to stop your ability to do crunches, planks, leg raises. Doesn't matter. So just superset these 2. Then we'll go into upper body 2. So upper body 2 is looking suspiciously similar to upper body 1. So let's kind of look for the differences. So the main differences come into the end of the training day. So lat pull downs, overhead press, bicep curls, and overhead tricep extension. So here's the thing. When it comes to pressing, if I'm going to do 3 forms of pressing in my training, I would prefer that at least one of them is body weight or just like, machine. But here I'm going to assume flat barbell bench press, incline barbell bench press, and barbell overhead press. And you are now doing 13 sets of pressing. I can't, in good faith, think of a novice who needs that much pressing volume to actually progress on these movements just yet. Volume is something you kind of add in over time, but it's not something you start. It's not something you start high. It's something you build up to over time. It's very taxing to actually like handle a lot of training volume. So here, what I would do is your training priority in this day is your overhead press. Put that first. Put this as the first movement, and then you do your let's say your flat bench as your secondary movement, and on the incline bench press, do something like an incline dumbbell, do something like a chest press machine, do something like a cable crossover where it's a bit easier. And then you do, like, if you want to do 5 sets here on this one, you can still keep the 4 sets, but here just do 3. Then with the assisted pull-ups and lat pull-downs, like, that's, you're doing 2 vertical pulls one after the other. What you could do here instead is you're doing your lat pull downs and then you're doing like barbell rows. That's something I would do, so that way you're kind of like changing the way that you're doing things. So here it's assisted pull-ups and seated rows. Here it's lat pull downs and barbell rows, just so that way you kind of train the back in a couple different ways, and then you go on from there. And then bicep curls, overhead tricep extension, same thing. Bicep curls, triceps, superset them both. Do 3 sets or 5 sets. And then for the rep range, one thing I would actually prefer to see is different set rep ranges for this. Biceps and triceps are small muscle groups, sure, but they can be trained with higher intensities, and so you can do things like, barbell bicep curls for 6 to 8 reps, overhead tricep extensions like a skull crusher for 6 to 10 reps. That's doable there as well. Lower body 2, it seems, since you're doing 3 sets of 5 reps, I would actually put this first in the training day, so that, and to kind of mirror the lower body 1 where it starts out with squats. On this day you start out with deadlifts. Here I wouldn't want you to do squats in the same exact way that you did it on lower body 1. I would much rather you do either with a 10 to 20% reduction in load, or a completely different variation. Pause squats, box squats, high bar if you usually squat low bar. I would much rather prefer to see that. And then everything else, no real big issues, except, like, just for the calf raises, just split it up. Like, just split it up between 2 different like as 2 different parts of a superset. So leg extensions, generally speaking, in most gyms there might be a like calf press machine fairly close to the leg extension. At least there is in my gym. I don't know about yours, but if that is the case for you, just do calf raises like immediately after, if you're not like taking up too much space and too much equipment in a crowded gym. Be considerate with your supersets. But yeah, generally speaking, with calf raises, I understand the necessity of them, especially for something like basketball. But generally speaking, calf raises are, especially for the applications you're probably like looking for, explosiveness and things of that nature. Calf raises really won't do much. Like, quite honestly, it'll make the muscle bigger, but it's not going to make you any better at actually using it for sport. Like, the top level basketball players, at least to my knowledge, aren't just doing calf raises all day. But that's somewhat outside my wheelhouse, or I'll just like, it's outside my wheelhouse, so I can't really say for sure. But generally speaking, it's not what I would recommend. Now, when it comes to the weekly volume, this is kind of what I mean by it just being too goddamn high. Like, for novices, like, so let's kind of like have a discussion here about, like, let's say optimal set ranges for hypertrophy, especially. So, like, I know, like, so I'm just gonna put RP, like, Renaissance periodization. Like, I think for them it's like 10 to 20, and then Menno Henselmans, he said something as low as 8 to 12. So what should this tell you? This is how much weekly volume you should accumulate, or weekly set volume that you should accumulate for muscles for hypertrophy. 8 to 12, 10 to 20, right? What I would recommend for you is that you actually start at this range, build up, and get to the point where you can do 10 to 20. So you're kind of starting out in that 10 to 20 range already. I would just bring things down to 8 to 12. see how much progress you can actually push here, because if you're a novice, you don't need all that much. This is just kind of junk volume. You're kind of just overtrain. You might run the risk of overtraining and you or under recovering more accurately, and it might just beat down your joints way more than your joints are currently able to sustain. So just start with more like 8 to 12 sets per muscle group. That's what I would recommend being here. Like, generally speaking, this is just way too high for a beginner of any goal, really. So that's my recommendation there. Overall, it's not a horrible program. Like, I mean, I know it's a high volume program, but the thing is, like, I'm going to make a lot of videos talking about like why I'm not the biggest fan of high volume programs, especially for novices. Like, especially for novices and maybe even the intermediate, but generally speaking, higher volumes are actually much more fatiguing and, in my opinion, a much more like a stressful uh, adaptation or signal to the body, and you are more likely, in my opinion, to burn out with volume rather than intensity. I find that to be the case for myself as well as for some of my other clients. So I'm going to make videos talking about why high volumes isn't always ideal. I'm not saying it's bad, because there is a dose-response relationship with higher volumes and muscle hypertrophy, but that's not an end-all be-all. There's more to hypertrophy. There's other factors that we need to consider to actually make sure that the way we train is sustainable in the long run, because size, strength, explosiveness, athleticism doesn't matter. The person who trains the longest at it will be the best at it. At least generally speaking, barring, geniuses and genetic freaks. But overall, that's my opinion on this program. It's not horrible, not terribly bad, but it's just something I feel was kind of unnecessary for a beginner. If they were to do it with this much exercise variation, definitely do less volume. Definitely do like 3 to 2 sets on the 2 set exercises. Just do an intensiveness technique. Get in and get out of the gym. If you're a novice lifter and you're training for more than an hour, not saying that you can't, but generally speaking, I would just prefer that you just get in, do some heavy lifts, do some heavy, hard-hitting lifts, and then go home. And then build from there. Like, there's no need to rush. If you are planning to actually build a respectable body, physique, and level of strength, there's no need to rush. You're going to be training for quite a while. The thing that you want to do is actually make sure your progress is slow, steady, and sustainable, because that is how you actually make progress if you're a natural lifter. It's going to be slow, it's going to be steady, and it needs to be that way. Otherwise, you're just going to burn yourself out, and you're going through these peaks and valleys of progression. And that's something I really wish I could tell myself back in the day to not do. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Cross the King, StansStrength.com. Sorry for posting the video late, Aaron. Today kind of went outside of my original plans, but I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions about any other questions about training or how to make your program a bit better for you, I did put out a couple free novice programs that I think are, generally speaking, just they're broad blanket programs, because that's what most of these programs have to be, just to try to cover as many bases for as many people as possible. But I do think that is a good base for you to kind of try out, and then over time modify it to your own personal needs, biases, preferences, and whatsoever. So, but that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Cross the King, and I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe.